What would it take to surprise even Donald Trump? Imagine Elon Musk moving under a shield of 20 armed specialists, AI-driven surveillance, and medical staff on call 24/7. In February 2025, his private team was deputized by the US Marshals, legally empowered like federal officers, an unprecedented step for any citizen. Stay until the end, because you'll discover how this decision forever blurred the line between private power and government authority. From accessible innovator to targeted power player. In the early years of his rise, Elon Musk was almost shockingly approachable for a man leading companies like Tesla and SpaceX. He attended product launches without barriers, walked factory floors freely, and often spoke with fans outside offices. His security at the time was minimal, often just a driver doubling as a guard. Musk believed accessibility was part of being a visionary, but that openness wouldn't last. By 2014, the first serious warning signs appeared. Incidents involving stalking and unwanted surveillance around his California homes forced Musk to confront a harsher reality. Local law enforcement could only provide limited assistance, and as Tesla's market cap surged into the $10 billion, his personal visibility skyrocketed. He wasn't just a CEO anymore, he was becoming a global symbol, and symbols attract risks. As his influence expanded into energy and aerospace, so did the threats. SpaceX's government contracts worth billions of dollars brought attention from foreign intelligence services. Tesla's position as a market disruptor made him a target for corporate espionage. Even personal details, his children's schooling, his travel habits were scrutinized by people looking for weaknesses. Each new venture increased his exposure, turning a once informal security detail into a necessity for survival. By the early 2020s, Musk's movements were tracked with the precision of a state official. Surveillance teams pre-scanned event venues, armored vehicles waited outside factories, and cyber specialists monitored chatter online for potential risks. The man who once prided himself on being accessible now lived behind multiple layers of defense. His security budget climbed into the tens of millions, reflecting the shift from a charismatic entrepreneur to a political and corporate power player whose decisions could sway global markets. This transformation was not just about protecting one person, it was about safeguarding the infrastructure of companies valued in the hundreds of billions. Musk's accessibility had given way to an entirely new reality. The higher the influence, the greater the risk. Comment below, do you think Musk's shift from openness to fortress-like protection was inevitable, or could a man that powerful ever remain truly accessible? The rise of foundation security. The creation of foundation security marked the moment Elon Musk stopped relying on outside contractors and built a private force designed to operate with the precision of a government agency. By 2020, the constant stream of threats, ranging from digital infiltration to coordinated surveillance, convinced him that only a bespoke organization, built from the ground up, could meet the scale of his risk profile. Foundation Security wasn't just a team of guards, it was structured like a hybrid between a private intelligence unit and a corporate defense arm. Recruitment was meticulous. Former members of US Navy SEALs, British SAS, and ex-FBI counterintelligence officers were offered contracts reportedly worth over $400,000 annually. Cybersecurity divisions were led by engineers poached from companies like Palantir and Google DeepMind, giving the firm an advanced AI-driven monitoring system capable of scraping millions of data points in real time. Analysts tracked everything from encrypted chatter on foreign servers to unusual drone activity near Tesla's gigafactories. The budget reflected the seriousness of the operation. By 2024, Foundation Security's expenditures exceeded $15 million per year, rivaling the personal security budgets of tech giants like Mark Zuckerberg and surpassing most Fortune 500 CEOs combined. Armored fleets included Tesla Cybertrucks, reinforced with military-grade plating and bullet-resistant glass. Each vehicle valued upwards of $250,000 after modifications. In the air, Musk's Gulfstream G650ER, a private jet costing around $70 million, was retrofitted with encrypted communications and electronic countermeasure systems more commonly found on government aircraft. The scope of protection extended far beyond Musk himself. Foundation security embedded staff inside SpaceX launch facilities, where sabotage posed catastrophic risks, and at Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory, where intellectual property theft was a constant concern. Offshore operations monitored threats to his Starlink satellites, ensuring the backbone of global communications Musk controlled could not be easily disrupted. Even the Boring Company's tunnels incorporated discrete surveillance systems linked back to Foundation's central command. What set Foundation apart was its philosophy. Unlike traditional private security firms, its operatives were trained to anticipate systemic threats, hostile governments, corporate espionage, or coordinated campaigns against Musk's companies. Their objective wasn't just to keep Musk physically safe, it was to protect the infrastructure of a multi-trillion-dollar empire whose disruption could ripple across global markets. Foundation security represented more than just personal defense. It was Musk's acknowledgement that his enterprises had grown so vast, so politically charged, that safeguarding them required nothing less than a private shadow agency, one operating at the frontier, where technology, wealth, and state-level power converged. Escalating threats and high-risk incidents. By 2025, Elon Musk's life had entered a phase where threats were no longer abstract, they were tangible, orchestrated, and at times narrowly avoided. 2 confirmed attempts on his life pushed his protection detail into a new dimension, transforming Foundation security into something that resembled a private version of the Secret Service. The shift wasn't just in numbers, it was in infrastructure, technology, and the kind of layered redundancy usually reserved for heads of state. Travel became a military-grade operation. Whenever Musk moved from his Gulfstream G650ER jet to ground transport, convoys of Tesla Model X SUVs, modified with armor and bullet-resistant glass, created rolling shields valued at over $250,000 each. Every vehicle was equipped with encrypted radios, biometric locks, and run-flat tires designed to keep moving even after being compromised. Advanced drones circled above, feeding real-time aerial footage back to a central command post staffed with analysts monitoring every angle. The presence of medical personnel became non-negotiable. At least 2 trauma specialists traveled with Musk at all times, carrying portable surgical kits and advanced defibrillators equipment valued at tens of thousands of dollars, ensuring immediate response in the event of an attack. Safe rooms were discreetly constructed in his residences and offices, complete with independent oxygen supply and secure communication lines linked directly to Foundation's headquarters. Security at public appearances grew even more complex. Venues were swept hours in advance with chemical and electronic sensors, while facial recognition software scanned thousands of attendees simultaneously. Algorithms powered by AI platforms similar to Palantir's Gotham flagged potential anomalies. Individuals lingering too long near barriers, heat signatures suggesting concealed devices, or unusual online activity synced to event schedules. Inside Musk's orbit, every layer was compartmentalized. His 20-person guard unit rotated shifts to avoid fatigue, with teams trained in counter-surveillance, close-quarters defense, and cyber intrusion response. Their annual payroll reportedly exceeded $8 million, a figure reflecting both their elite background and the risks inherent in their mission. Each was vetted through polygraphs, continuous monitoring, and financial audits to prevent the possibility of infiltration. These measures were not paranoia, they were the result of survival. Musk's position as both a business magnate and political disruptor meant adversaries spanned from disgruntled ex-employees to hostile state actors. In this climate, Foundation Security's role evolved from conventional protection into a sophisticated shield that blurred the line between private defense and national security infrastructure. For Musk, the message was clear. Survival wasn't just about armor or guards. It was about building a fortress around his life, a system so advanced and unyielding that even determined adversaries would find themselves outmatched at every turn. Political power and new enemies. When Elon Musk accepted leadership of the Department of Government Efficiency, many thought it would be a symbolic role. Instead, he launched one of the most aggressive overhauls of federal bureaucracy in modern history. Within his first year, entire agencies were dismantled and tens of thousands of jobs were cut. Musk argued that streamlining government would save billions of taxpayer dollars, but in practice, it created a sprawling network of enemies. from displaced officials to powerful lobbyists whose influence evaporated overnight. This restructuring wasn't just about payroll cuts, it redirected money away from entrenched programs into Musk's vision of technology-driven governance. Billions were allocated to AI auditing systems, blockchain-based record-keeping, and energy-efficient infrastructure projects that mirrored the innovations of Tesla and SpaceX. To his supporters, this looked like the modernization America desperately needed. To his critics, it was a corporate magnate, repurposing government into a testbed for his private ideas. The consequences were immediate. Former career officials, suddenly stripped of authority, began leaking sensitive information. Union leaders launched campaigns portraying Musk as dismantling livelihoods for profit. Even foreign governments saw opportunity. State-backed media painted him as destabilizing U.S. institutions, while intelligence services reportedly probed for weaknesses in his inner circle. The threats were no longer confined to physical safety. They included cyber intrusions targeting Starlink satellites, attempts to disrupt Tesla's gigafactories, and sophisticated financial maneuvers against SpaceX contracts worth billions of dollars. Musk's visibility in Washington grew, but so did his isolation. Cabinet colleagues often viewed him as a wild card, while congressional hearings turned into spectacles questioning whether one man had too much influence over both private industry and public administration. For Foundation security, this political environment meant recalibrating strategies. Infiltration risk was now as high as assassination risk, and hostile actors ranged from dismissed clerks to international intelligence agencies. Every reform Musk pushed through acted as both progress and provocation. His push to consolidate overlapping regulatory agencies cut billions in annual waste, but erased entire bureaucracies that had existed for decades. In the vacuum, resentment festered, manifesting in protests outside Antilia-style skyscraper offices where Musk conducted meetings, and in covert campaigns designed to tarnish his reputation. The paradox was clear. Musk's efficiency crusade may have reshaped government, but it also ensured he would be a permanent lightning rod for opposition. The stronger his reforms, the more formidable his adversaries became. Comment below. Do you think Musk's gamble to strip down federal power was a visionary step toward progress, or a dangerous move that created more enemies than allies? Deputization by the U.S. Marshals Service. February 2025 marked a turning point not only in Elon Musk's personal life, but in the history of private security in the United States. In an unprecedented move, the U.S. Marshals Service formally deputized members of Musk's private security firm, Foundation Security. This decision effectively granted his team federal law enforcement powers, the authority to carry weapons on federal property, detain suspects, and act with the same legal standing as government agents. Never before had such powers been extended to a private citizen's detail. The move came after months of escalating threats that traditional protective measures could no longer contain. Musk's activities as head of the Department of Government Efficiency, including the dismantling of major agencies and reallocation of billions of dollars in budgets, had created adversaries both domestic and foreign. Intelligence assessments suggested that the risks had reached levels typically reserved for elected leaders, forcing the government to treat Musk's protection as a matter of national security. For Foundation Security, the deputization transformed them from a private shield into an auxiliary arm of federal law enforcement. Each of the 20 core operatives underwent additional vetting and certification, including advanced firearms training on par with Marshal standards. Their salaries, already among the highest in the industry at $400,000 annually per agent, now included federal stipends for operating on government assignments. Equipment lists expanded to include federally issued sidearms, encrypted radios tied into Marshals networks, and access to secure transportation corridors normally restricted to officials. Operationally, the change meant Musk's movements were coordinated with the same infrastructure used to protect judges, federal witnesses, and in some cases cabinet members. Motorcades benefited from police escorts without the delays of bureaucratic clearance, and his private aircraft, already valued at $70 million, was granted expedited access to restricted airspace during transit. Foundation's analysts gained access to federal threat databases, allowing them to cross-censor chatter flagged by intelligence services with their own AI-driven monitoring systems. Critics argued that this blurred the line between wealth and state power. By allowing a billionaire's privately funded force to hold federal authority, the government set a precedent that raised difficult questions about accountability. Supporters countered that Musk's unique position, sitting at the intersection of business, politics and national security, demanded extraordinary solutions. What was undeniable, however, was the symbolism. A man who began his career building electric cars and rockets now commanded a security apparatus with the reach and legitimacy of a federal agency. For observers, the deputization represented not just protection, but a glimpse into a future where private influence could reshape the very definitions of state authority. Zuckerberg comparison, different threat models. Mark Zuckerberg represents a very different model of billionaire security. In 2024, Meta's public filings revealed that the company allocated more than $27 million to protect its founder. Unlike Elon Musk, whose security needs were elevated to the level of federal cooperation, Zuckerberg's approach remained tied to corporate responsibility, reflecting the particular risks of running the world's largest social media empire. The bulk of Zuckerberg's security budget covered both physical and digital protection. At his California residences, estimated at over $60 million combined, layers of technology controlled access, biometric gates, motion sensors hidden in landscaped gardens, and panic rooms reinforced with blast-resistant doors. His $150 million estate in Hawaii, spanning nearly 1,500 acres, was outfitted with drone surveillance and private security patrols operating 24 hours a day. These assets weren't just about comfort, they were fortresses designed to withstand the backlash generated by Meta's global footprint. The threats Zuckerberg faced were fundamentally different from Musk's. They were rooted in controversies tied to data privacy scandals, allegations of election interference, and public anger over the addictive design of Meta platforms. Protests outside headquarters in Menlo Park forced Meta to integrate corporate security directly into his personal life, with teams overlapping between company facilities and family protection. Inside Meta, cybersecurity absorbed a large portion of spending. Advanced encryption systems shielded Zuckerberg's personal communications, while internal audits monitored potential insider threats from disgruntled employees. Security staff were trained not only in physical defense, but in information control, an acknowledgement that reputational sabotage through leaks or hacks could be just as damaging as physical danger. His mobility strategy also diverged from Musk's. While Musk relied on armored convoys and federal corridors, Zuckerberg traveled in armored Cadillac Escalades and Mercedes Maybach SUVs valued between $200,000 and $500,000 each, supported by a rotating team of bodyguards trained in both executive protection and digital counter-surveillance. Even his appearances at congressional hearings involved advanced teams scanning for electronic interception attempts. The comparison between Musk and Zuckerberg underscores how different industries produce different threat landscapes. Musk's risks were systemic, born of political reform and national security stakes, while Zuckerberg's were corporate, linked to consumer trust and regulatory battles, yet both men illustrate the same reality. In today's world, extreme wealth and influence inevitably demand security systems that cost tens of millions annually and operate at the cutting edge of both technology and human vigilance. Blurring private wealth and federal authority. The deputization of Elon Musk's foundation security by the U.S. Marshals Service created a precedent that blurred the line between private wealth and federal authority. For the first time in American history, a privately funded team of guards was granted the same powers as sworn law enforcement officers. They could carry federally sanctioned weapons, make arrests on protected grounds, and access intelligence systems normally restricted to government personnel. The implications were staggering. Foundation Securities operatives, each earning upwards of $400,000 annually, now functioned under dual authority, funded by Musk's vast fortune, yet legitimized by the federal government. Their fleets of Tesla Cybertrucks, heavily modified with armor and surveillance technology, valued at over $250,000 each, were suddenly authorized to patrol alongside state escorts. Their encrypted communications were tied directly into federal networks, allowing seamless coordination with agencies like Homeland Security and the FBI. What troubled observers was not just the scale of the operation, but the precedent it established. If one billionaire could effectively transform his private staff into federal agents, what stopped others with immense fortunes, figures with empires in oil, defense or technology, from demanding the same privilege? Critics argued this was the privatization of law enforcement, where money could buy powers once reserved for elected leaders. Supporters countered that Musk's role was unique. His leadership of the Department of Government Efficiency, his control over assets like Starlink satellites valued in the tens of billions, and his influence over industries critical to national security made him a figure unlike any other private citizen. For them, deputization was not favoritism, but a necessary response to protect infrastructure intertwined with US sovereignty. Even Donald Trump, no stranger to extraordinary measures, reportedly expressed astonishment. To him, the move signaled a future where billionaire protection and federal power could merge into something indistinguishable, a hybrid force answering both to personal wealth and government authority. The moment underscored a profound shift. In an age where private individuals control assets rivaling nation-states, the boundaries of authority are no longer clear. The new security paradigm. Elon Musk's security transformation now stands as a symbol of how private power can reshape traditional boundaries of authority. No longer confined to corporate protection, his model has merged private innovation, immense wealth, and federal legitimacy into a sovereign-like arrangement. In effect, Musk operates with a shield more advanced than many governments provide for their own leaders. Foundation Security, once a privately funded detail, has become a prototype for the future. Its AI-driven surveillance grids, armored Tesla Cybertrucks exceeding $250,000 each, and integration with federal communication networks represent not just protection, but a full ecosystem. Unlike traditional billionaires who rely on discreet guards or expensive residences, Musk's system functions like a state-level infrastructure. It anticipates threats, neutralizes risks, and does so with a scale normally reserved for national defense budgets. The precedent goes beyond one man. With assets such as SpaceX contracts worth billions and Starlink satellites valued in the tens of billions, Musk illustrates how private ownership of strategic resources compels governments to extend protections normally unavailable to individuals. His security is no longer about safeguarding a billionaire. It is about preserving technology critical to global communications, defense, and economics. Observers note that this convergence of personal wealth and government backing signals a new era. The ultra-rich may no longer remain passive clients of private firms. They can build parallel systems rivaling federal institutions and, in Musk's case, even merge with them. It's a shift that forces us to question whether the next frontier of power will belong to governments or to individuals with fortunes vast enough to rewrite the rules. Comment below, do you see Musk's security empire as a necessary evolution for modern leaders or a dangerous model that blurs the limits of private power? From Foundation Security's rise to Musk's transformation into a man guarded like a head of state, his journey shows how wealth and influence can reshape the rules of protection. The deputization by US Marshals wasn't just a security upgrade, it was a redefinition of authority, merging private defense with federal power. Even Donald Trump admitted he had never seen anything like it, and this might be just the beginning of a new era of billionaire protection. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like, subscribe to Billionaire Story, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next.